recording done. Okay. All right. All right. So hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this first members Q&A with Kat March. So I'm not going to do too much of the talking. I only have a list of questions that all of our members sent over to ask Kat about her career. If you do have a question, please let us know in the chat at any point. And we hope to make this like very informal and easy for everyone to connect with one another. So with that said, Kat, would you kindly introduce yourself and tell us your name, where you're from, and what is it that you currently do for work?
Of course. So my name is Kat March. My pronouns are she, her. I am from Essex, but now living in London. And I currently work as a senior development manager specialising in corporate fundraising at Theatre Royal Stratford East.
Amazing. So could you tell us a little bit about what does that entail, sort of like on a day-to-day basis? Like what are your main job responsibilities?
And also, please tell me if I'm using jargon at all, because, you know, you forget when you're so in your own world, you forget what isn't implicit. So a development team at any charity is basically just a fundraising team. I have a specialism in corporate fundraising. So essentially that's just driving income for charities, and in this case, a theatre, through corporate partnerships. It might be sponsorships of a show, it might be corporate donations. But yes, it's just whenever a private organisation wants to support the charitable sector.
Amazing. Can you tell us how did you get into this? So how did you get started in the creative industries? Because you've held a lot of different positions, right? So what was like your first foray in the industry? What was that?
Absolutely. So I studied English literature for my undergraduate degree, like maybe 10, 12 or so years ago. And I got really involved with the drama society there. And I think like a lot of people who work in theatre now in the kind of back of house roles, I once saw myself as an actor, which is hilarious now. So I thought I was going to be an actor. Kind of tried that for a little bit, didn't go my way, it wasn't for me. I then thought I wanted to be a stage manager because I'm very organised and I like people. But I soon realised that stage managers are like the bread and butter of the theatre industry. They are their first thing in the morning, their last thing at night. The hours are hell. So I thought, I'm someone who likes stability and Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So I got myself a master's from the University of Sheffield in theatre and performance, so I could continue learning about it. And I just started to do lots of volunteer work in the spare time. At the time I was just an admin assistant at an exam board in Sheffield, and just any opportunity to kind of volunteer back of house, just get up close to theatre, I did. I then moved to London and got my first sort of paid work in theatre. I was an intern specialising in development, fundraising, at the Arcola Theatre in Dalston. And I was kind of subsidising that with front of house work at the Barbican. So it's sort of just, I knew it was theatre, I knew what I was good at and what kind of work that I liked. And that's kind of how I sort of fell into fundraising, because I wanted to match the two up, and the Arcola internship opened that up for me.
I love that. I think one of the things I tell people the most is when they're thinking about the career they want to do, it's not only to think about what they like or their passions, but also what is the life they want to lead. Because you're absolutely right, like being a stage manager or working in events can sound really great at all, but it involves working nights, like hectic, long hours, and there's people who really love and thrive under this, and some people hate waking up one day at 6 a.m. and then on the next day at noon. So I think it's so interesting that that's how you got into it. So one thing that some people wanted to know is like, what are sort of the most important skills someone needs to show that they have if they're looking for an entry-level role sort of in development?
Mhm.
And on that note, is it different if you're looking to work in development in the live arts, like performance, etc., or visual arts?
So I will answer the first part of the question, and then I can start to kind of discuss some of the differences. And it's only in my experience between the two sectors. I must caveat it with that. So some of the skills for entry-level jobs in development within the arts, just attention to detail, because we do a lot of writing. So like we write applications, we do a lot of proofreading. There's a lot of communications that we send out. So any way that you can demonstrate transferable skills in kind of detailed, accurate communication and attention to detail. Communication skills, you have to like people or be able to speak to them, because it's a lot of, as you progress through your career in fundraising, you are networking with people. Eventually you'll be making asks of substantial amounts of money from people. So it helps if you are kind of driven to be relational, I guess, and enjoy meeting other people. And the kind of the way I often think about why I came to fundraising is liking people and being organized, kind of keeping up with deadlines. Although my specialism's in corporate, which is slightly more atypical, if you're looking more kind of trusts and foundations route, or like grant making as a source of fundraising, you have to be very up to date with deadlines for like proposals, budgets, reporting, that kind of thing. So it does help if you have a kind of organized mind. And as I say, the differences in my experience between the visual arts and the performing arts, my experience was that the visual arts were slightly more corporate, or how I interpret it was a more corporate space. A lot more of my colleagues at Tate had sort of postgraduate degrees. Just the way they presented themselves was more how I perceived it as on the corporate edge, whereas in theatre it wasn't so much of that kind of corporate appearance. There wasn't so much a kind of academic love of the subject that I saw in visual arts. It was more a kind of emotional love of the subject. So yes, I would just keep that in mind if you're kind of looking at the two industries, how to kind of, so if I were now going to make the move back into visual arts, because I'm currently in performing arts, I would kind of think about the language that I used in a slightly different way. It's almost unrecognizable. And I would also say that in the visual arts, more of my colleagues had come from the corporate world into visual arts. I've not seen that at all really in performing arts, of people making the move from corporate into performing arts. I hope I've answered that, Isabel.
Yeah. No, that was great. Yeah, if anyone has questions, again, please pop them in the chat. And otherwise, I'll go through the other questions we had for Kat. So, Kat, you said that you worked across different fields, so like performance, then you went to like Tate, and you went back to theater. How did you kind of frame your experience? Because a lot of people seem to be struggling with that, with like wanting to pivot for places. And I think it's funny because I think especially roles in fundraising and marketing are very transferable, but I would say most roles in the creative industries can be transferable, but there seems to be very close gates for subsectors. And I think especially for the visual arts and heritage sector. So was this something hard for you? Did you have a connection there? Like, how was that process?
No, I didn't have a connection, but one thing I always recommend to anyone who I've kind of mentored or given advice to is look for maternity cover roles or kind of short-term contracts. It's a great way to get skills in a sector, and having sat on the kind of recruitment panel for maternity cover roles, I found that you're looking for slightly different things. You're just looking for a safe pair of hands. And so transferable skills is really important. You just want someone that you can trust. And so I think I was very lucky in that I didn't have any links into Tate at all, but it was a maternity cover post that I went for that eventually, due to changes in the team, I was able to stay on. And that happened so much at Tate. It was, we used to joke, especially in the development team, which was like 80 strong at its largest, was a very, very pregnant staff, because, you know, a good thing about working for charities is they do have good maternity pay. They can do. And so there was a lot of opportunities for entry-level positions to kind of come in, or if you're looking to scale up in a different sector, looking for those kind of non-permanent positions. And in terms of transferable skills, I think that, so fundraising is a skill in itself. And I think a good fundraiser should be able to sell anything. That's essentially what we do. We're sort of selling the cause, the social impact, the art, the plays, the communities that you work with, to someone who wants to invest in them and see them work better. And I think a good fundraiser can kind of take any product and sell it, but you will have natural affinities for certain things. So I think if you're moving into a sector, demonstrate that you might not have experience in that sector, but you do love it, or you can bring extracurricular interest in it. You know, maybe you're an artist yourself, or you've got a membership at the Tate or something like that. And yes, I think that is how I would recommend making that transfer. But I do appreciate that kind of museums and heritage can be a little bit more difficult to penetrate. Yes.
I love that. I think for anyone who is actually interested in fundraising and it's new, there's a really nice organization called Young Arts Fundraisers, and they run a bunch of events. I'm actually doing a talk for them soon, and one of our mentors from last year's edition, Nadia, who's talking to the members in May, she is on the board of that organization. It's a nonprofit, it's a volunteer-run organization, and it's really lovely. So yeah, if anyone wants to join, feel free. For anyone who just joined the conversation, we're talking to Kat March, and if you have any questions about her role, her career, or career and development in general, please let us know. Now, Kat, I think it would be great. One more question that we received from people in terms of job hunting is, if people are writing a cover letter to try to get a job in development, what are some of the things they should wow you with? Has any cover letter actually wowed you, or do you just go for like knows what to do, likes negotiating, is a people person? Is there anything that you've seen like that's good, or that's really useful, or that's a telltale that this person might be a good fit for this job?
Yeah, of course. So I've done a lot of hiring for entry-level positions, so I can speak from my experience at both Tate and at Theatre Royal Stratford East. In terms of transferable skills, as a fundraiser, you're kind of looking for someone who has a like an entrepreneurial spirit. And I don't mean that in some sort of terrible sales way, because you're not going to be cold calling people or anything in fundraising. I mean, I think 5-10 years ago, that's how it was, but I've never done the cold calling thing, and I'm not about to do it. But I think people who kind of see opportunity or use networks in interesting ways. So, you know, let's say while you're at university, you really wanted to put on an exhibition of your friend's work, and you kind of went to the venue to kind of speak to, you found a venue, you spoke to them, you kind of negotiated it for discounted or free, you spoke with everyone about it, you kind of put it on. It's some way that you can demonstrate that you see the need for something and have kind of gone about a way to make it happen. That's essentially what development is. It's kind of finding the funding, the lifeblood to make a charity run. And then lots of kind of networking and lunches and other kind of people pleasing stuff in between. But one thing I would say is actually practical about the cover letters is, the arts and culture industry is sought after, and it's an attractive industry to work in. And certainly both at Tate and at Stratford East, when we've run entry-level recruitment campaigns, we get lots of applications. I would really recommend structuring cover letters in a way that is readable. If you just look at first glance at a page and it's a heck of a lot of text, and it can be tough to read and it can be tough to stand out. I like to use headings. I'm a big fan of a bullet point, just making it readable. So then your experience will sing through the kind of form in which your cover letter has appeared, basically.
I love practical questions. That's practical. Okay, Kat, we now have a slight pivot because we do have a lot of people in the membership who are kind of artists and entrepreneurs, or people have their side hustle, and they would like to know from your experience as a fundraiser and developer, what are the best ways to reach out to someone around getting money for a project or getting support for a project? It can be a person, a foundation, a corporate, but I think in this case, mostly corporates. What would you say are some of the best things to do, some best practices that you can share with us, thinking about like a young producer or something like this?
Gosh, okay, so I'm going to give what I think. I'll specialize in a corporate answer to this question.
Okay.
So I think what you always need to think of is what you can offer that organization. What about your product, your project, is unique? What will they get from sponsoring it? Will they get proximity to art, which can deliver things like, can they get free tickets to exhibitions or to shows or something for their staff, to help keep their staff engaged with them, and for their staff to kind of associate them with as an employer who wants to make their staff happy. Could they also use those sorts of tickets to entertain their own clients? You should also think a little bit about your brand and who you are and what you stand for. I talk about brand in two ways. You've got the kind of values-led brand. So do you stand for being sustainable, or do you want to promote the voices of underrepresented groups? And then that should sort of give you a line into who also is led by those same values, or who also wants to reach those people. We forget that another asset is our networks or our audiences or communities. Who might be wanting to reach your networks, and you can unlock that relationship. And finally, I also think that looking at who is operating in your area, and I mean that in like a geographical area, who is new and attempting to kind of develop a market share or a presence in that area. I work in Stratford, which is a huge area of regeneration. We're 10 years after the Olympic Games and there's still sites going up. We've got the East Bank opening up in the next couple of years, which will have the V&A, and Sadler's Wells will have a site there. But it is really building up. But all these new businesses that are coming into your area are going to be looking to invest financially and other ways into the area. And if you have a cultural asset which will bring people to the area, which you could boost their brand within the area, that is just, you know, gold to them, because otherwise they could be kind of coming in and it will be a few more years before they can establish themselves in that area. I'm happy to kind of go into more detail in any of those points, but without, it's hard to generalize.
Yeah, no, of course. I think, you know, so many people have creative products now, and like it can be like a show, an exhibition, and it can be hard to figure out where to go, because of course there's normal funding, as we know, like Arts Council funding, or, you know, sometimes people have council funding as well, and a few grants here and there. But I do find that it's important to know as well how to talk to, exactly as you're saying, potential corporates or people around you. And it can be even, I always say that a good way to start is to start by getting some in-kind support. So if you're running an exhibition, can you know, talk to the coffee shop next to you to, or get a drinks brand to help you out, to support you for the opening? Because I think that actually, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Kat, but I think that actually uses up some of our the skills required to develop that into then, you know, a funding opportunity. And when you have a partnership of any kind, I always think it's valuable for yourself to consider how much value you can bring into it, because it's a lot easier to continue a partnership than to always renew and get new and new people to come in, right?
Yes, absolutely. And we've moved kind of away from sponsorship models in the arts to what you see corporate partnerships called all the time. And that's exactly what you've just said there, Isabel, which is like seeing these long-term partners as exactly that. You see them for more than kind of the financial investment that they put into your cause, but as vats of knowledge. I worked with EY at Tate, and that was a long-term partnership, which did involve sponsorship of a major exhibition each year, but it was so multi-stranded that it kind of encapsulated all parts of the business, including an in-kind project. And EY is an accounting firm. It looks at processes, and it looks at you know, streamlining processes to make sure they're the most efficient and effective. And we worked on a fabulous partnership where they worked with our collection care teams to analyze all their processes across the department and kind of streamline them and make recommendations for how they could improve efficiency. And that was in-kind consulting. So if you can't get cash out of someone and they still kind of are identified with your cause or your brand or whoever you are, think about people for all sorts. And also think of kind of like good neighbors. If people can't help you now in the way that you want, keep them warm, keep them close to you in your network. I often find that going to people for advice often leads to receiving kind of in-kind or cash donations as well. You just never know who's going to be useful, basically. Yes.
I love it. Okay, Kat, we also got a question now for you that is kind of personal, but
okay.
I shared a post today about like mistakes that have happened made by interns, and it's about like how we all F up sometimes. So someone wanted to ask, what was one like big challenge or mess up that you've done, and what, like, if you could share something, and how did you like recover from it? If that was like a big challenge that you had to go through. You don't need to name names, obviously.
Okay. And where it was absolutely 100% my fault as well.
Not necessarily, I guess. It can be any challenge. I mean, you work with a team, right? So
I can think of so many. This is the problem.
And yet you're still here. So that's a good sign.
Absolutely. Gosh, so the one that's really jumping out at me is while I was at Tate, we hosted a major client event at Tate Britain based around an upcoming exhibition, which involved them inviting sort of 300 of their closest, most important clients to Tate Britain for tours, speeches, a beautiful dinner in one of the galleries, and an up close and personal look at one of the paintings that was going to be featured in the exhibition with our kind of conservation team. So they were kind of going to show, use gosh, sorry if there are any conservators on the call. I'm not au fait with the language, but they're, doing infrared scans and showing you kind of what was beneath the painting and everything. So it was all going to plan. And I was kind of listening to speeches, and my colleague had been to the store where the painting was to be displayed, came up to me, and she just sort of whispered to me, she said, yeah, none of us can find the painting anywhere, and this painting was worth millions in the collection. And I think in the business you call it a squeaky bum moment. I had just no idea what had happened. And essentially it was through kind of the fault of me and my team, who hadn't briefed the art handlers, and the art handlers, being fantastic and proactive, had packaged it up and put it down in the docks ready to go to leave the next day super early. So I had to go and explain this to the client and say, we're just locating this painting that you've based your entire event around and paid X thousands of pounds. Please bear with us. And their just face went completely grumpy at me. And all you can do at that point is hold up your hands and say, look, I'm really sorry, I'm going to find a solution. But what eventually happened was myself and my colleague went down into the dock, located the painting that had kind of been wrapped up in all this protective material. And again, sorry for any conservators or anyone who works in art handling in the call, but with the help of our conservator, kind of cut with box cutters, cut this big painting out of its box. It was displayed on its side, and then we just ran tours then down in this dock space rather than in the lovely conservation studios as we'd hoped to. And you know what, the kind of energy and the not slapdash, but slightly behind the scenes working gallery angle of it was how we spun it. We were like, oh yes, of course, you're literally seeing the painting before it's shipped out. They didn't need to know that they were supposed to see it in the conservation studios. And obviously the clients, the people who I worked with to run the event, didn't know, but it worked out in the end. But yes, that was a real sweaty moment, I think.
I love that story. Thank you for sharing. And I love that, literally at those moments, it's almost like you're an event manager. You're like, okay, then, there's not much I can do about this. This did not go according to plan. And then you have to actually wait and assume that things are going wrong. And I think that part's good teaching for life right now of we can try to control things as much as possible, but sometimes,
Yes, absolutely. And just be prepared to have a different spin on things if you're presenting to an audience or to a client, is to know, yeah, didn't you want this kind of intimate, close look behind the scenes? Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So Kat, one question that someone also asked, someone who's quite young and thinking about going through this type of role, she wants to know, what's the best part about this type of work that you do?
The best part about fundraising is my impression of other sort of back of house office jobs in the arts is it can be quite siloed. So you are an accountant in a theatre, you work in the finance, and you probably go and see shows, but it does seem quite siloed. I think fundraising is brilliant if you work in a gallery or a theatre or museum, because you have to know your stuff about the breadth of the organisation, but you also have to collaborate with lots of different teams across the organisation, so you experience the whole breadth of its work. So that gives you two things. That gives you one, kind of visibility and networking within the organization. By the end of my time at Tate, you know, we had friends in the marketing department, in curatorial, in collection care, art handling. You know, it was such a broad, in the learning teams, it's such a broad spectrum, and you get close to different bits of the work. So I think fundraising, and I know I'm biased, is a great way to do something that you love or you care about and get to experience it in lots of micro and macro ways.
I love that. You know, when I interned at the VNA, my boss at the time said, listen, if you don't know what to do, you can do marketing or fundraising, because those are like never ending jobs in the army.
Absolutely. You're valuable.
Yeah, that was a good point. But kind of cynical, but also kind of useful at times like this, when, like, you know, it's always hard to find jobs anyway.
Yeah.
So Kat, thank you so much for sharing everything with us. I would like to know personally, what is something about you that we might not know? And this could be something personal. It can be like, you love cats, you hate the color pink, you're addicted to anything right now, like TV wise, just something about yourself. And then also tell us if you're online in any way professionally, that people can reach out to you and talk to you.
Of course. So something off the page, I guess, about me is I have recently discovered cabaret performance. I did a cabaret course all at the beginning of this year. I did a showcase a couple of weeks ago, and I love it. I really enjoy it. My act is sort of like clowning with a twist. So if there are any cabaret fans or any performers out there and want to link up, I'm just so in love with it as a performance at the moment. And then, yeah, absolutely, I am on Instagram at catmarch2. I'm always happy to kind of link up through Instagram, and I'm also on LinkedIn, catmarch, and I'm just always happy to kind of answer questions and share my experience, because I know that before you get into this industry, it can seem quite mystifying, and like you need to have 100 skill sets and experiences just to get in there. And I really do believe that the more people you meet kind of doing the jobs that you're interested in, you know, someone always knows someone who knows of an inn or something like that. And just kind of taking people coffee, people love it. We all love it. There's nothing nicer than when someone says, I'm really interested in what you do, or how did you get there, you know, can I take you for a coffee and pick your brains, or would you have a call with me? You know, we're all obsessed with ourselves, we all it's just great. So reach out to me, reach out to other people, please. It's this is an industry of sharing, I think. Totally.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kat. Thanks for everyone who sent all the questions. And yes, if you want to, please go reach out to Kat. It's always nice to hear that her time was valuable and useful here. If anyone has last minute comments, this is your time to shine. Otherwise, I'm going to let Kat go because I already got her for more than I should. And Kat will hopefully be our mentor on the next edition, which we are setting up. Breathe. We had not forgotten about the mentoring. It's just we are changing things this time around, so we need to work on a few operational things, but we're gonna get there eventually. But again, thank you so much, Kat, for joining us and for sharing everything that you know.
Yeah, of course. I hope I haven't missed anything. So yeah, please hit me up if you've got any other questions.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kat, and thanks everyone. I'll see you for the next one.
Bye.
Bye.